Hey, I bet you didn't know that there's an actual biblical principle of situational awareness in your Bible. Come on in and let's check out what God has to say about bringing workers to the front line. God bless you. Hello, everybody. Here we are on another podcast, Remnant Revealed. Rick, how are you?
I'm doing all right. You doing okay?
I'm doing great. If it's any better, I'd be twins.
Hey, you seem very excited.
I am excited. I am.
Good.
I'm alive.
That's good.
Boom, 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 boom. My heart's beating.
Hey,
lungs are breathing.
Heard a lot of good feedback on some of our past episodes.
Yeah.
People watching them. I had one guy that said that that he really has come to a point where he's depending upon them. He said he needs the recharge, every 1 or 2 weeks when they come out every other week or whatever, that it really seems to land right at the time that he's needing it to kind of recharge and reboot. So that's very good. He's a sergeant in the police department.
That's why we do it.
Yeah, that is it.
Right? That's why we started it. That's why we do it. That's why we keep it going.
Yeah. So
you guys can help us by sending it out to people
and subscribe.
Keep it going. Subscribe. Yes, we do. We need subscribers.
So we've learned now that we're doing well on our views, our hours watched, all that, but it's subscribers now that we got to break through that threshold, and then this will start getting recommended out there in general when people are searching around, and then they'll find there's a whole library of episodes that they can see.
And I think that it would be wise, if I can use that word, for everybody that loves this podcast to do that now. Yeah. Because as we get closer to November and some aftermath of all that happens during the political season, officers really need some encouragement. And I think it would be very good if people did that. We're not a political show. But in the culture of what we deal with in our year, I think everybody knows that plays a part in that, and the pressures and all the mess.
I think for most of our officers, they've already they've been in it, they've been through it.
Sure,
and what we're facing now is the byproducts of all that.
That's what I mean. It's if we have another riot in the city, that's a lot of extra pressure
in any city,
across the nation.
Yeah,
I even had them on the mission field during all those years or times in the last 3 or 4 years when I would go on the mission field. We were having issues over there. I think I got the last plane out of one nation back to the U.S. Right as things really, they shut the night before they shut the airport down the next morning with riots.
Well, we're now bearing the consequences of all that kind of junk. One of the ways that we're seeing it right now is the amounts of officer shortages.
That's right.
That major cities across the country are facing.
Huge.
There was a recent news story, a national news story that kind of captured it. Can I share some of the numbers with you?
Love to. I know one city, it's just astronomical, and you probably know which one, but I saw a statistic. It's just astronomical, the amount of numbers they're down.
So here are some of the ones that were reported. These are percentage declines in officer staffing. In San Francisco, their officer staffing is down 22%. Los Angeles is down 12%. Phoenix down 13%.
Wow.
New Orleans, they're down 22%.
Holy schmoly.
St. Louis, they're down 27%. New York is down 8%. Remember, 8% may not sound like a lot, but that's 8% of about 40,000 officers. So that adds up quick. Indianapolis is down right at 19%. Chicago is down 12%. And Minneapolis, this is probably the one you're talking about, is down 39%.
Yeah, that's the one. 39. Holy schmoly, brother. That is...
Yeah. I mean, you think about it.
They're working with 60% of their workforce.
Yeah.
And then if they have a officer-involved shooting or any kind of an issue where they have to put people on administrative leave.
Oh, just officers injured.
Anything.
Yeah.
They're down sometimes it can be 3 or 4 officers on a run that, they have to deal with the administrative stuff with that. You're talking, it just boggles my mind.
Yeah. Well, that's where we're at, though. And so, when you're down a fifth of your workforce, I mean, think about that. So if you're around that 20% mark, let's just say an average of those around 20%, that's 1 out of every 5 officers is gone. And that's your staffing for the department as a whole.
And that's just normal, regular staffing. That's not staffing you may need in the middle of an extra crisis.
Yeah. I lost my train of thought, but you're really focused on patrol is what people think of. You got to remember, you got to staff the rest of the police department too.
Right.
That's 20% overall. So the impact on patrol level, uniforms out in your neighborhood, is probably even higher than 20% reductions when you look at that. And so,
wow.
Now you're talking about you're not able to retain the officers that you have. How on earth are you going to recruit new officers to replenish those ranks? And going back to 2019, 2020, this is what we warned of. Decriminalizing the criminals while you're depolicing the police. This is exactly what we were talking about.
Right.
Disincentivizing people to even go into the profession. So as you run people out and you don't replace them, you have effectively broken the system. And as we've always said, the goal is to break it and remake it.
Mm-hmm.
And what do folks want to remake it into? Well, take a good look around. It's chaos and disorder everywhere. And that's what our major cities are up against. And now those suburban communities are starting to feel that impact as well.
Yeah, I saw and I don't think we mentioned this before, but I saw an article where sheriff's department had to say between these hours of at night, we're not going to have any staff.
Yeah, that's right.
Because we don't have enough people to do that. And one of the reasons that was listed was the recruits that we do train, once they come on staff, the pay is so low, they transition out and say, hey, I can't do this for this, and leave that area. So they're doing what they can to get people in and train them, but then they lateral to another higher paying job somewhere. So that's difficult to retain people.
And think about that. You have an agency, a sheriff's department, a policing agency that is saying between these hours and the nighttime overnight, we're closed up for business. I mean, have you ever heard of such a thing?
No.
Yet that they're literally doing that. We talked about in a previous episode, you've got an agency like Pittsburgh Police Department,
mm-hmm.
where they limited their staffing overnight for the entire city down to 20 to 30 officers for a whole city the size of Pittsburgh. Said all we'll do is respond to emergency calls only.
Right.
Well, what are you communicating to the evildoers in your community? We always say evil follows the path of least resistance.
Least resistance, yeah.
What do you think you're communicating to them? Mm-hmm. And so you're saying that the police are closed for business, and the neighborhoods and the residents are open to victimization.
And and the police department then has to start prioritizing runs based off of what is the most dangerous or what's the most severe situation a person could be in that moment. So, for instance, a shoplifting thing may have to wait while you have an armed robbery or you have a murder victim situation that may be in a community. And that's tough for law enforcement officers to even have to do that, because their heart and their spirit is to go handle all bad and fix it.
Well, it becomes where it's not up to the officers.
That's right.
The decision makers that they work for, who have created that environment, are then the ones dictating to them, you can't go on these runs, you have to go on these. And we're talking about like report runs. People say, well, it's just a report, it can wait. Well, you're talking about things like maybe a burglary to a residence.
Right.
That can scar a family more than an act of violence for the fear that somebody was in your home.
Yeah.
And then you call the police and they literally say, no officers coming out, and we'll take a report from you over the phone.
Any kind of victimization like that is traumatic.
Absolutely.
I work a lot in the community, and some of the meetings that we're in, I'll get asked questions about, well, I had so-and-so, I called the police, my vehicle was broken into in my driveway, I called the police, they told me to do a report over the internet, and I have to, I try to help them understand where things are currently and how that got there.
Yeah.
Why we're in the condition we're in the community and the circumstances that surround that. One of them being what you're just sharing, low numbers. I remember what the recruit numbers were and people who were coming in when I first got here.
Yeah.
Way, way much higher than they are today. But when you are demoralized all the time and beaten up and beaten down and told your job isn't worth anything, nobody cares, nobody loves you, nobody wants you around, defund the police, get rid of the police, let's reimagine the police, all these words and phrases that are used to, as your phrase is, I think, to criminalize the police and decriminalize the criminals.
Decriminalize the criminals while depolicing the police.
Depolicing the police, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, you disincentivize the police from doing their job.
Right.
Or make it impossible for them to do that. That's where we're at, and that's what we keep confronting, and that's happening in every major city, all at the same time. Yep. And we're talking about percentages. So somebody says, well, 19, 20%, is that, that means 80% still there. Well, that translates into Indianapolis, which we're familiar with. A 19% reduction in staffing is over 350 police officers short.
I wonder what that would tally as far as runs would be per officer, let's say. It'd be hard to do that.
Here's a way to put it in context. Yeah. In a city like Indianapolis, they have 6 service districts. It would be like eliminating 3 of those districts. That's what that translates.
I'm not laughing because
this is what people can't wrap their minds around. Yeah. So you could be saying into an entire service area in any major city, what this equates to is there's no more police in your service area.
In your whole area. Good Lord.
A whole section of a city.
3 of them.
Mm-hmm. And so then you've got those officers who are working. They're up against extreme violence, the levels of which are record levels, levels of which these cities have not seen.
Yep.
And they're literally being asked to risk their lives with both hands tied behind their back, and at the same time, a criminal justice system that's cutting them off at the knees.
Yep.
So then you say, well, boy, I wonder why we can't get people to want to do this job.
That's right.
Yeah. So, the thing with that, I think for most officers, and especially their family members, we're seeing officers shot, critically injured, dying in the line of duty all over the country. They're looking at all these numbers. They're looking at this landscape, and here we are again saying, so what do we do? I mean, it can become very easily to become completely overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And, we do this podcast not just to be standing around pointing to the problems, but also to point
to
what the
answers are.
There you go.
Yeah.
And the answers are. So, preacher man, you got something for us here?
I do. I really do. I have something good.
Good.
I do. Because, everything that we face in this world, God has an answer for. And if you
say
put
that
your
again, because I think people need to hear that.
Everything we face in this world, God has an answer for. He's had an answer for. He has one, and he'll always have one.
How many things?
Everything.
Everything.
He has answered every single thing that we need.
And he even put it in a book for us.
That's exactly right.
Manual.
Principles, statutes, what to do with evil, how to get good to prevail, how many people do you need to be able to do good if God is in your midst, and what it's going to be like if you kick God out of your midst.
Can I say something about that?
We're going to do it by yourself. Yep.
I think we're seeing that. If so, I know there are people that watch this that may not go to church, let's say, regularly, may not go to church. But for the people who are watching this who do regularly go to church, if you're going to see one of two things, and it probably depends on what the strength of the church that you're within.
Right.
But strong Bible-based churches around the country, at the same time all this junk is going on, attendance is surging in those churches. And it seems like when you read about it, hear about it, talk to people about it, talk to pastors especially, one of the consistent things that we hear is that people are so disillusioned, people are so overwhelmed, people can't find an answer that works for this,
right,
that now they're flooding back into the church saying,
right.
What do you got for me?
They're
Just like I just said
hope.
to you. Yeah.
They're looking for hope. And it's not like we're pulling on God in the last moments of life and he's just another thing we try. They're starting to recognize deep inside of their heart, I need God.
There you go.
This is bigger than man can answer. I don't want anybody else's lies. I don't want to listen to anybody else's garbage anymore telling me I don't need God or he's a crutch or all the religion is all bunk. I'm starting to realize that those who walk with God do way better in circumstances that are severely, severely destructive than those who do not.
Don't you think that's what we're seeing with our officers?
I think so. I think so too. They're starting to realize that there is something to this relationship issue. Mm-hmm. There is something to making sure that my God hole is full of God and not full of something else.
Right.
They're starting to realize there is strength that comes from the spirit realm, that it's things I can't see, that when I put my trust in God, I am energized. I am absolutely full of hope where I was hopeless to start with.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Very cool.
We had a guy named Gideon in Judges chapter 7. He became one of the great judges of Israel. In the Old Testament, these were people that God used to...
So when you say Judges, that's an actual book in the Bible.
That's an actual book in the Bible, and it was written, and it's full of stories of men and women, by the way, who became part of helping Israel be led by the Spirit of God or the Word of God. And these judges God used to help determine what direction that Israel was going and what direction they should be going. And they would come in at different times in those relationships.
I'm just laughing because look at today, right?
Hey, it's very relevant.
Our judges today are playing an active role in which direction our communities are going.
That's exactly right.
And in many of them, it's going downhill.
Going downhill.
And when you trace it back, it leads back to judges that are making insane decisions about criminal cases, convictions, and sentencing.
Thank you.
Bond issues, no bond.
Ridiculous.
Things such as that.
And the judges that did well, they were blessed. The nation was blessed. The judges that judged poorly and got their own lives messed up, they didn't do so well in the end.
Before I started really reading the Bible, I don't think I ever realized there was an entire book in the Bible that was about judges and the judicial system of the day thousands of years ago. Captured in this book. It was important to God.
Very important to God. So there's a guy named Gideon. God calls him to become or be a great warrior. And Gideon, in the beginning of that time with God, didn't see himself as a warrior, didn't see himself as a leader, didn't see himself as anything but just working for his dad, right? So it was like, you don't want me.
Yeah, I'm not your guy.
I'm not your guy. There's plenty of other people that probably are tougher than I am.
Right.
But God called him just like he called you as an officer. And you may not have seen yourself as a great combatant but God called you.
I can tell you many officers never saw themselves in this profession, doing this job, in this calling at a time like now.
No, because we didn't think this time would hit our generation, most of us.
By the way, that's why many seasoned officers are fleeing. They're leaving the profession because they're like,
I didn't sign up for this.
I didn't see the writing on the wall. I've been doing this long enough, and this isn't going well.
Yeah,
and
we're not headed in the right direction.
Yeah,
and so Israel keeps being. The Midianites keep coming in, and they keep wreaking havoc on the Israelites. And so God calls on Gideon to come out of that, and to develop a group of men to go fight and deal with it.
That sounds cool.
Now he starts out with a pretty good group of people, just like we used to have, a pretty good group of recruits, or at least people who were signing up for application. But they were not all healthy, and they were not all well.
Can I give you an example of that?
Sure.
We have agencies where they used to recruit, and for a hiring process would maybe get 3,000 applicants for a limited number of vacancies. Those same agencies now are down to like 300 applicants. And by the time they complete the background checks and investigations on the applicants, they whittle that down sometimes to less than 100 eligible recruits for the positions that's needed.
And then I've heard of, some recruit classes being as low as 14.
Yeah. In major cities. Yeah. Where they may need
where they used to be
75, 80 officers, they're only able to bring in 10 to 15.
Yeah. That's scary.
So what do you do with that?
Well, you do what we do. You're in trouble. You're down. You're in trouble.
Yeah.
Because you have more retiring than you're able to hire.
I always give this visual.
It's like crazy.
It's like take a funnel and turn it upside down.
Turn it upside down.
It's like an upside down funnel. You got a small spout on top, very few coming in, and a whole bunch going out.
Now, I'm going to tell you a story. I'm going to tell you a pastor story.
It's probably dangerous.
And then I'm going to get back. It probably is.
All right.
But when I was growing up, we were poor. We spent some time very poor. That's why I'm not in agreement with poverty. It's of the devil. I grew up poor. It's not cool.
Yeah.
None of it's humbling. It's tormenting.
Yeah.
And we rented as a shack. If you talk to our producer, which is my son, I took him as a little boy to go see the shack. Actually, you've seen it.
You took me there.
Where Daddy was raised part of his life.
Yeah.
And the old farmer that owned this shack, there wasn't a bathroom in it. It was an outhouse.
Hey, by the way.
Yeah?
You're my friend.
Yes.
It was a shack.
It was a shack.
Yeah.
I was not kidding, was I?
No.
And that's no embellishment. That's no preacher extra. It was a shack.
Yeah. It'd probably be the size of a semi-large yard shed.
Yeah. Built with 2x2s, no insulation. So Mom piled the blankets on so thick you literally couldn't roll over hardly. One pot-bellied stove in the kitchen that we, as young boys, had to get up and go throw wood in that thing to keep it going, or at least have coals for the next morning. Poverty's not a pretty picture. I don't care what country it's in.
Yeah.
And so the old farmer decided he was going to put some indoor plumbing in this shack. So he took a closet, and it wasn't wide enough for the whole tub. It was just wide enough that the commode at the back turned.
Commode would be like a toilet.
A toilet, turned and faced the door, and that's how wide it was. Wow. So to get to the commode, you had to step in the bathtub to get to the commode, because the bathtub, he had cut a section of the wall out under the sink and stuck the lip of the bathtub up inside the wall.
So it'd fit.
So it would fit.
Wow. So
to fill up the bathtub, you plugged up the bathtub and you turned on the sink.
Okay.
Because there was no plumbing.
Yeah.
Just a down drain pipe under the sink.
Is this what a funnel made you think of?
This is what a funnel made me think of, because it's just like that. You can run the water all you want.
Right.
But if you don't have the stopper in the tub, you can run the sink water all you want. But if you don't have a stopper in the tub, it never fills up.
That's right.
So you can
now if the tub was full and you're draining it,
that's one thing,
and you're adding water at the top.
That's
you
right.
got more flowing out
That's
than
right.
what's flowing in.
That's right. And we used to do that, right? If you were the last one to get some warm water in there, or at least some clean water in there,
right?
Cleaner water. So it's just a constant. You think you're filling things. I mean, you can even tell people, "Oh, I'm filling up the bathtub." No, you're not.
Yeah,
because you got the stopper out.
We're hiring people. We're hiring officers.
So that's what's said by people who...
You get your pictures with officers raising their right hand.
Who benefit from those terms.
But what you don't see is all the officers heading out the back door.
You don't see the drain plug that's open.
That you ran out.
That's right.
Yeah.
Sorry for my poverty story.
No, I mean,
but I think it's a good analogy. It fits.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Wow.
So... we need God to help us, and
what
our
you're
officers
saying is
need God to help us.
If the funnel doesn't fit, officers will quit. That's what you're saying.
That's what I'm saying.
Sorry. Go on.
Okay. Yeah, we better move on.
All right.
That could get wonky there. That's bad. So. There's this judge named Gideon, and God calls him to defeat the Midianites for Israel and give them their victory back. So he starts out, and he's got several thousand men.
Okay, like a large agency,
like a large group, like a large agency. He's got several thousand men. The Lord says, "You got too many," because He knows they're not all going to be with Him when the battle hits.
Oh wow.
So he says, you tell anybody that's timid or afraid, in other words, that maybe they just got hired on because they thought it was a good career choice. But when the stuff really starts happening.
You get a car and you get to drive fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Lord knows things are going to go bad. They're going to run. They're going to fall apart. So he says, you tell all of those that are timid or afraid that they can just go home. Well, 22,000 of them went home.
Wow, that's an upside down funnel.
Imagine being the general and being called, and you're like, Lord, what? You didn't tell me 22,000 of them was going to leave. So that leaves him with 10,000 men. So he had 32,000 men to start with, and 2/3 of those men go home.
So that's a 66% reduction.
That's a 66% reduction. And so the Lord says, that's good, but there's still too many. It didn't get everybody. You got some, and I'm going to show you something police-wise in this story.
Okay.
And he says, you still got, there's still too many.
Where are we at again? Judges what?
Judges chapter 7, verse 4. But the Lord said to Gideon, there's still too many. Bring them down to the spring, and I will test them. So just like you go through your tests at the academy, the Lord calls these men down to the spring. He says, I want to see who is actually going to do well and who's not. So it's like that
scenario-based testing.
That's right.
Okay.
And so he brings them down there, and he says, now you have them drink out of that brook. Well,
so this is like a creek.
Like a creek. I've been to that creek many times. I've drank water out of it. It's a brook. It comes from inside of a mountain. They don't know where it starts.
So what they're talking about in the Bible, thousands of years ago. You've been to this brook.
I've been to this Gideon's brook. I've drunk water. Yep.
Wow.
And you know what? The guys that knelt and put their whole face down into the water, they got sent home.
Like drinking it, just putting their face in it.
I didn't drink it like that. Because I read this story and I knew how I was going to have my picture taken. I scooped that water up and I drank it out of my hand while I was looking around.
What's this say?
What do we call that?
Well, like
if I'm looking around and I'm watching
situational awareness.
Situational awareness. What kind of soldier do you want helping you fight your battles? What kind of police officer do you want on the scene? One that hides his head in the water or the sand, or one that she has.
What do we say? Keep your head on a swivel.
Keep your head on a swivel. So I found it really.
What happens in here? I don't know what you're talking about.
All right. So he says, there are still too many. Bring them down to the spring. I will test them to determine who will go with you and who will not. So he brings them all down, divide the men into two groups. In one group, put all of those who cup water in their hands and lap it with their tongues like a dog. In the other group, put all of those who kneel down and drink with their mouths in the stream. Only 300 of the men drank from their hands. How did he say they drank from their hands? Like a
dog.
What do we call police officers? Sheepdogs.
Mm-hmm.
Situational awareness.
So like the dog's you're drinking out of the hand, but you're still looking around.
Still looking around.
For any danger.
That's right. You can still see what's going on.
So only 300 out of all these.
Only 300 out of 32,000. Listen to me. Only 300 out of 32,000 had what was necessary to go to battle, to win the war.
Almost makes you wonder if that's what's really going on here.
So we may be down, but we're not out. Our numbers, I'm just encouraging officers who are out there on the beat right now who are thinking, man, dear God, this is just, I don't know how we're going to do this.
Running short every night.
I'm going to tell you, you put your trust in God, the circumstances may look wholly, crazily different than what you thought it was going to. You may not have the numbers you think you need or should need, but God makes up the difference if you trust him. If you don't trust him and you just do it in your flesh, you can go out with 32,000 soldiers and get your butt whipped and sent home.
Meaning doing it in the flesh, meaning doing it on your own without him.
Doing it on your own, put no trust in God. We don't need God. This is just religion. It don't mean anything. Listen, man.
One of the things that I do often when I'm serving in the roles of the chaplain with the National FOP, when we have meetings and whatnot, you do prayer and open conferences and all those things. And I think it comes from personal relationship with God and personal life. Do the same thing.
Sure.
Which is in the prayer is to invite God into the situation.
That's right.
That's a
smart move.
I've always taken away from the Bible and reading and whatnot is God seems to be very clear. He won't force himself into your situation. He'll let you do it on your own.
Yeah, if you want to.
Self-will, free will.
Yep.
But if you invite him in,
smart too.
He shows up every time.
It's smart too.
Yeah.
Somebody asked me not too long ago, said, man, with all the stuff that you've been through, how in the... Actually, a meeting I was just at, they interviewed me at the meeting, said, with all the stuff that you've been through, physically, like through your life, all the stuff, cancer, all the stuff you've been through, how have you made it? I said, God, and I just refuse to quit.
Mm-hmm.
Just don't quit.
Well, that might be the message that officers and their families need to hear right now.
That's right.
How are we going to make it through this? God, and refuse to quit.
God, and I'm just not going to quit. Now, let me tell you, not quitting, that's full commitment. That's full commitment. One time, Jesus asked a question of his disciples, and he said, who are you going to go to? And one of his disciples said, you're the Christ. Where else could we go?
Mm-hmm.
To whom else would we go to? Fully committed. We're fully committed, right?
Yeah.
When you refuse to quit, your commitment, that's what shines. You're totally committed.
Sun Tzu talked about that in The Art of War, did he not?
That's right.
He called it death ground.
Death ground, that's right.
Said that when folks stand on death ground, meaning there's no other options, and they're either going to fight and win or they're going to die.
Or they're going to die.
They perform at exceptional levels.
Yep. Yes, they do.
That's exactly right. Well, I mean, but it sounds humorous, but take a good look around.
Yeah.
I can guarantee you that when officers are in the middle of a fight for their life, as we train them, there is no plan B, and there isn't an option, and there is no surrender.
No, sir.
Because your only other option is death.
That's right.
When those officers are standing on the skirmish line in the middle of a riot, I would venture to say they get dug into. We've got nowhere else to go here. Yeah. We've got to hold this line.
We got to stand. We can't give in.
It's funny you talk about that with the 300 that were left. It makes me think of that movie, 300.
300, yeah.
A lot of people love that movie.
Yeah.
But
they went in and they won. And they won. The way that the Lord helped them win was unconventional. I think we're going to see, and now I'm going to switch a minute and speak spiritual. From the Spirit, we're going to see some unconventional things that God's going to put on the plate and on the table for cities to be able to not only survive but start thriving through these things. For officers not only to survive but to thrive through these tumultuous times that we live in. There's going to be some unconventional ways that are going to take place that give law enforcement officers an upper hand over those that seek evil and destruction. And darkness is going to be overwhelmed by light.
Well, think if communities do like we're saying and drive themselves back into the church, being the building, but amongst the church, which are the people of Christ, and they all collectively as a community start inviting God back into their community, and at the same time our officers who feel like they're up against it, they got nowhere else to go, if they start inviting God into their situation, even on a daily basis, what would happen? I don't know. What would happen if a roll call, for example, if somebody had the stones to say, hey, why don't we just pray real quick before we go out here?
Thank you.
And invite God into the shift that day.
Yep.
And what they're doing.
Is that conventional?
Well, I would think it would be seen as unconventional in this day and age.
There you go. Yep.
Yeah, but powerful.
Powerful.
And again, what are we seeing? When we invite God in, he shows up every time.
Shows up. Just invite him.
Wow.
Yep, just invite him. Don't think he's not going to show up. The faith comes when you say, I'm just going to trust God's going to show up, and invite him in.
Yeah.
I want him to come in to our roll call, to our daily work habits, to our daily street beats, to all the things that we have to do.
And that's not just a roll call for where you're in a major city and you got 50 people getting ready to go to work.
Any roll call.
It could be a roll call of a smaller agency where maybe you got 2-3 officers that are getting ready to go after it. 100%. Right? Same thing still applies.
That's right.
God's still the same in all of those environments.
That's right.
And maybe if you're thinking, well, yeah, that sounds good, but I don't know that I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
What if you took this episode and just shared it amongst some of your shift mates, and then maybe collectively you guys come up with the idea that, hey, maybe we should try this, or maybe if any one of us feel comfortable, maybe we actually call the departmental chaplain or somebody like that and say, why don't you come by our roll call and pray over us a little bit.
And do it. That's right.
Well, let me throw this at you. If it goes really bad, the really bad thing happens on that shift.
Guess who they're going to call?
They're going to call the chaplain in and ask him to do what?
They're not calling Ghostbusters.
Pray over him.
That's right.
So why not be ahead of it?
Yeah.
Why not be proactive
Do some preventive maintenance.
There you go.
There you go. Now, Jesus dealt with shortage. Jesus dealt with circumstances of personnel shortage.
Oh.
Matthew.
So thousands of years later.
Okay.
So now we go to the New Testament.
The need for workers. New Testament. Matthew. Go to Matthew. And chapter 9.
Mm-hmm.
And starting in we'll start with verse 35.
Got it.
Jesus traveled through all the towns and villages of that area, teaching in the synagogues and announcing the good news about the kingdom, and healed every kind of disease and illness. And when he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them because they were confused and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. That was the verse. Yeah. That was the verse God gave me when we planted our church, when we came to Indianapolis. He said to his disciples, listen to this, the harvest is great, but the workers are few.
There you go.
What's shortage? but not just not shortage of stuff, shortage of workers, shortage of employees, shortage of people that were needed. Officer shortage. Verse 38.
So what did he do?
Pray to the Lord who is in charge of the harvest.
There you go.
God, let me tell you, God cares about peace on this earth. What did the angels sing when Jesus was born? Peace on earth, goodwill toward men. God's will towards man is good, and he wants peace on earth. That's why he calls officers to be police or peace officers. They're fulfilling his will by bringing peace to non-peaceful situations. So we would pray the Lord, who is in charge of peace, to send us workers into the field. And he says, ask him to send more workers into his field. That's Jesus.
So here you've got the Lord saying that when you find yourself in the situation where the workers are few for the job, the task that's
still
at
got
hand,
the job to do, right?
He says what? Invite him into
Invite him in. Pray. Ask him.
Pray to the Lord.
Ask him. So sometimes we get caught up pounding different people for different stuff, right? Because they're in control, or they want you to think they're the Lord and in total control. But man, we have the right to start crying out to the Lord.
Politicians and decision makers and bosses and
policies and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that stuff isn't needed or necessary.
No doubt.
I'm not sure about the politics, but the policies and all that, they're needed, right? However, God is still God. And when we are facing dire situations like we are in our communities across our nation, and it's not just our nation, it's around the world now, because they copy the United States of America in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. And so now that we are in the kind of battles that we're in, man, we got to turn to God. Police officers, you got to turn to God and start praying and asking him together.
That's the way out of this mess.
Send us more. Father, put that call in the heart of more young men and young women to answer this call, to stand for peace and righteousness and for the rule of law.
And give them the strength, the courage, and the endurance to do it.
And then bless them financially and with retirement and health.
Safety.
Because it don't matter how much you have laid up for retirement if you're not healthy enough to ever use it.
That's
and you die before you get to spend $1. I can't remember. I was with somebody not too long ago. Might have been you. And someone had reached they had reached into their 80s from retiring as a police officer. And we all shouted as a group because it was like, that's a long time for an officer to be alive.
Reap what was sown.
And reap what was sown.
In a good way.
Because normally you and I, we're dealing with the flip side of that.
That is right.
Right? Officers who they've retired, they made it through with a great career, and then all of a sudden it doesn't go so well.
That's right.
Because of the toll their body takes from doing the job. So
I think the thing that's important in what we've done here, and I hope modeled for folks, is number one, don't take our word for this stuff. So when we're talking about, we're being very, you'll notice I always ask, where are you at? What's the address? What book you in? What chapter? What verse? The reason being is if you're watching this, listening to this, pick up your Bible and go to where we're given that citation and read it for yourself.
That's right.
You're going to be amazed to see a few verses here in the book of Matthew that applies to your life right now.
Right now. Right this moment.
And it speaks life into the situation that you find yourself in.
So this is, I read out of the New Living Translation instead of the King James translation today. I normally do King James, but I like the way this put this. Just it's straightforward. Just pray that he sends more workers. Yeah. So I'm going to give you my commitment, family members, law enforcement members. I'm going to give you my commitment. I'm going to start praying daily, which I already do, but I'm going to intensify that for more workers in the field. We need our recruit classes to begin to increase, and the retention of those who go through those classes to be top-notch, excellent officer candidates and make it through their FTO and minister grace to our city.
We need one other thing.
What else?
And the ones who are there to be able to stay and withstand the storm.
Yes.
As these new people come online.
So, that's right. So retention.
Retain first.
Retain first. Yep.
And recruitment follows.
And then pack them full of resilience. That's what I pray every
right.
day for our officers. Give them the anointing of resiliency in their life to be able not only just to survive, but to thrive now and when they retire.
That's right.
In Jesus' name.
That's good. That's
Amen.
good stuff.
That is good stuff. We love you.
I know that blessed some folks.
There is nothing you can do about that. We call you very blessed. We do this podcast as a blessing. We just want to be a blessing, an encouragement, but also give you some spiritual and practical tools of how you can be the very best officer you can be. And so trust that occurs, that you're blessed by that. Continue to subscribe. Send it out to everybody you can to get them to subscribe.
Yeah, tell them to subscribe. That's what we need now.
That's what we need now.
We'll break through.
There you go.
Yeah, man.
Hey, blessings, my friend.
Thanks
I love
for
you
doing this. Love
very
you too,
much.
bub.
Appreciate you. And hey, we'll see you soon. Hey, thanks for joining us today. Rick and I trust that you heard something that will help your life. And if you believe that it would help others, please make sure and share. Like and subscribe and hit that bell so that you can be notified when the next podcast is available. God bless you, and we'll see you soon.